What's up, guys? The last fight night of the year. Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley on ESPN. The card's pretty decent for a fight night. You got Davey versus Ramon Taveras. Felipe Lima's on the card. Sean Woodson. Drakkar Klose versus Alvarez. Michael Johnson versus Ottman Azaitar. That's gonna be a banger. Daniel Marcos undefeated versus Adrian Yanez. Sleeper of the card. Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. Manel Kep versus Bruno Silva. Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. And Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. Almost every fight on this card is at least decent, right? And I would have to say that the prospect of the night is, of course, Felipe Lima. He's on a 12-win streak coming off a impressive performance against Muhammad Naimov, who's a very good opponent at that skill level. He's got excellent Muay Thai skills. He's good on the ground, very fast and powerful. Felipe Lima might be the kind of prospect that the featherweight division needs if Ilia Topuria is going to be moving to the lightweight division. The stake of the night, the fighter that needs a win, is Dustin Jacoby. Even though he's a very good fighter, he is 1-4 in his last 5 fights, coming off a 2-loss streak. He really needs a win here against Vitor Petrino, which is going to be a competitive fight. Then the fighter of the night, the biggest name on the card, the star of the card, is Colby Covington. He doesn't fight that often. He's coming off a loss and one of the worst performances of his entire career, which he says he was injured and stuff like that, but he's still the biggest name on the card. He's the majority of the reason people are going to be watching this card, and he is taking it up on short notice too, so he is doing the UFC a favor. The banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, I think, is that Michael Johnson Ottman Azaitar fight. They're gonna be throwing hands back and forth for the entire fight. The speed of Michael Johnson versus the power of Ottman Azaitar. Johnson seems to be more technical, but he's way out of his prime. Ottman Azaitar could land one of those big shots and put Michael Johnson out, but Ottman might be too slow. So that's gonna be an exciting fight, man. Then the sleeper of the night, I think, is Daniel Marcos versus Adrian Yanez. It's gonna be a great fight. Marcos throws out a lot of crazy flying knees and front kicks to the face, and Adrian Yanez has the boxing skill in close range, so it's going to be a bit of a technical fight back and forth, depending on the range that Daniel Marcos keeps on Adrian Yanez, and if Yanez can get in closer to put together his punching combinations. Then the fight of the night, the best fight on the card, it's the main event. Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. If Colby is in good form, like if he's still performing well, this should be a very good fight. The wrestling onslaught with endless cardio versus the explosiveness of Joaquin Buckley, who can finish his opponent at any moment. He's getting better with his striking, he's getting better with his wrestling, his ground and pound, kicks from range, punches in close. And in this fight specifically, it's interesting to see if Colby wants to strike as much or he wants to go straight to the wrestling and try to win that way. Because every moment in the feet with Buckley is a moment that Buckley could drop him. I don't know if he'll knock Colby out because Colby has a good chin and he's very tough. He's able to come back and recover, shown many times throughout his career. But Buckley is very hard to exchange with when you don't have a reach advantage on him. And then we go to the first fight, Piera Rodriguez versus Josephine Knuttson. I'm gonna go with Knuttson. She's the better striker. She's better on the ground. Rodriguez is very wild and wants to trade with her opponent. And Knuttson keeps it very technical, stays at range, pumps out the jab, throws out really good kicks. She's a former kickboxer, so she has the kickboxing experience, whereas, again, Rodriguez is very wild. Haymakers and all that sort of stuff. Almost like the generic brawler. She could land some big shot and hurt Knuttson, but I gotta go with the more skilled fighter in this fight, and that is Josephine Knuttson by a decision. And then we go to Davey versus Ramon Taveras. I'm gonna go Taveras. Davey Grant's wild, man. Like against Rafael Sunsao, throwing that spinning back fist and then submitting him. Haymakers coming from his hip. Big looping shots, but very good on the ground. And it's crazy because he doesn't shoot a lot of takedowns. He usually shoots like one time in a fight, even though he has really good grappling. But Taveras has good takedown defense. He's explosive. He's powerful. He's more technical with the stand-up. Southpaw versus orthodox, but there are moments where Davey Grant will switch stances, like how he knocked out Jonathan Martinez, still his biggest win of his entire career. Taveras, though, has a sharp left hand, good hooks, decent head movement, and unless he gets hit by some wild punch from Davey Grant, maybe moving his head a little too much, it gets intercepted by a hook or something, I see Ramon Taveras winning this fight comfortably. So Taveras by decision. Then we go to Miranda Maverick versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. Definitely going with Maverick in this fight. She has the wrestling advantage. Might have a problem with the reach of Horth, who's very tall and long for the division, and Maverick isn't that great of a striker, but Horth has been taken down by every opponent in her UFC career so far, and the only one of them that has comparable wrestling to Maverick is maybe Ivana Petrovic, but Miranda seems to be physically stronger than Ivana, so I think Maverick will show her experience advantage, her wrestling advantage. She's gonna be physically stronger to win this fight by a close decision. Then we go to Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. Have to go with Felipe Lima in this fight. He's just a better overall striker. Miles Johns is getting better though. Striking's looking more crisp, strong leg kicks, powerful overhand, digs to the body. Still, that Anderson Dos Santos knockout was so insane. Left body hook right overhand to the head, KOing his opponent. But the thing is, he does reset a lot. After he explodes, he likes to move along the cage or just laterally. And Felipe Lima's not going to allow him to just move around like that without kicking him to the body, letting jabs, combinations. Lima is also just the more technical fighter. He's way faster, and he has the takedown to go to whenever Johns gives an opening for any wrestling advantage for Felipe Lima. So I'm going to go with Lima by a second or third round TKO. Then we're going to Sean Woodson versus Fernando Padilla. You got to go with Woodson, man. Never bet against Sean Woodson. Even when it looks like he shouldn't be winning the fight, he happens to always win. Except when he fought Julian Erosa, which was a bit different, right? It's his only loss in his entire career, and he's fighting the guy who beat Julian Erosa in the first round. As you know about MMA math, it always works out this way. Fernando beats Erosa, Erosa beats Woodson, and now Woodson is going to confirm it by beating Fernando by a decision. One of the biggest things about Fernando is just how tall and long he is for the weight class. 6'1" with a 76-inch reach at the featherweight division. Sean Woodson is 6'2", an inch taller, with a 78-inch reach, 2-inch reach advantage. Has good combinations, really long with everything that he throws, those flying knees and stuff like that, and he likes to clinch a lot to stop the opponent from being aggressive. I would say Sean Woodson might be a little bit faster. He's more creative with his offense, whereas Fernando has more power. So should be a good fight, but you gotta go with Sean Woodson in these kind of fights, man. They call him a sniper, but he's hitting people with like the Dragunov from way back in Call of Duty. What's one of those snipers that didn't one-shot anybody? Was it the Dragunov? Because Woodson doesn't have that many knockouts. One knockout in the UFC, a flying knee against Terrence McKinney in the Contender Series. Most of his fights go to a decision. And then we go to Yoel Alvarez versus Drakkar Klose. I'm going with Alvarez. I think he's better in the stand-up. I think he's better on the ground. He's way bigger. Works the jab very well. Good knees. Dangerous on the ground. Drakkar Klose is like your lightweight jack of all trades. And I think Alvarez is better in the striking and better on the ground while also just being physically bigger. Should be a good performance from Yoel Alvarez. Then we go to Michael Johnson versus Ottman Azaitar. This is going to be a very fun fight, man. Michael Johnson has been exchanging wins and losses since 2021, coming off a win against Darius Flowers, whereas Ottman Azaitar, 2-loss streak, and he's more inactive than Michael Johnson. You would think at 38 years old, been fighting since 2008, has been in the UFC for the majority of his career, you would think that Michael Johnson would be more inactive at the later end of his career than Ottman Azaitar, who's in his physical prime. Ottman fights once a year, sometimes once every 2 years, and he has not won since 2020 when he beat Kamaworthy. And I think all of those hiatuses is hurting his skills and hurting his career in general. He doesn't have much of a chin. Michael Johnson still hits hard. The power is the last thing to go. He's still fast. I think he's gonna be faster than Ottman. The power advantage might go to Ottman, but I think Michael Johnson's the better striker of the two. The only thing that could stop Michael Johnson from winning this fight is if he gets cracked by some big shot. If Ottman just runs down with big hooks and haymakers, lands on Michael Johnson as he's trying to move away or something like that, that's how Ottman Azaitar would most likely win the fight. But I'm going with Michael Johnson in this one, man. He has the speed advantage. He's the better striker, way more technical boxer. I'm going to go with Michael Johnson by a decision, but I could also see a knockout. And then we go to Navajo Stirling versus Tuco Tokos in the light heavyweight division. You have to go with Stirling. He's a better striker. He comes from kickboxing, and he brings a different kind of skill set to the light heavyweight division that a lot of other guys don't do over there, like probing jabs, measuring with the jab very well, switching stances to smother the opponent in the clinch, find an opening for an elbow, good wrist control even from distance, solid kicks, spinning back kicks to the body. Tokos is powerful, but he's like a level below Navajo Stirling in terms of technique everywhere in the stand-up, so it should be a good win for Navajo Stirling. I would say he would win by knockout in the first or second round. And then we go to Daniel Marcos versus Adrian Yanez. I'm gonna go with Yanez here. This is gonna be a major speed advantage for Adrian Yanez. He's way better as a boxer. If he gets in close on Marcos, he could get a knockout. The thing about Daniel Marcos is he needs to stay at range, throw the kicks, but I think eventually Adrian Yanez is gonna get in close, land his combinations, big body shot, might put him down, or use that to extend his combinations to the head, overwhelming Daniel Marcos. But it should be a good fight. I think Marcos's kicks should accumulate a lot of damage, but as we saw in Adrianez's last fight, he countered the leg kick from Salvador, knocking him out with the right hand. Daniel Marcos does have some boxing skill, but he's extremely offensive with his hands and leaves himself open to get countered by any big shot from Yanez. I mean, he'll throw some wild bolo uppercuts, keeps his chin up in the air when he's throwing jabs, and I think Yanez will knock him out in the second or third rounds. And then we go to Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. I'm not confident in Vitor winning after that Anthony Smith performance, but I think he should win against Dustin Jacoby. Vitor has a grappling advantage. He's physically stronger. He hits very hard, even though he's technically not great on the stand-up. Dustin Jacoby should be the more technical striker of the two, but I think if he's way more aggressive with his striking in this fight, he could win. But I think Vitor is going to be the one pressuring in the fight because he does have the takedown threat. Sometimes Dustin is moving backwards along the cage, and that's going to allow Vitor to throw hands, go under for takedowns and combination. Dustin's going to try to counter, but doesn't see the takedown coming. Vitor taking him to the ground and then eventually maybe submitting him or winning that way, rinse and repeat until a decision. So I'll go Vitor Petrino by a third round submission. And then go to Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. This fight should be alright if Bruno Silva goes forward, tries to exchange with Manel Kape, because Kape's fights are usually very slow. There's a moment where he explodes and lands some big shot, knocks the opponent out or drops him or something like that. But usually his fights are slow, not that exciting, especially his last performance against Muhammad Mokaev, which was abysmal. That was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. The Felipe Dos Santos fight was good. David Vorak was running along the cage almost the entire first round. The Matheus Nicolau fight was good, but a lot slower than what we're used to seeing in the flyweight division, right? Flyweights are usually action-packed, like crazy offense, crazy athleticism, and all that stuff. Manel Kape's fights are resembling a bit of heavyweight, light heavyweight pace. Very, very slow compared to the other flyweights. But the thing is, he does have those kind of knockouts, right? The pace is like a suspense of waiting for the big knockout at heavyweight. And Manel Kape does have those moments where he flying knees his opponent, KOs him, drops him with the left hand or something like that. But I think that kind of pace could hurt him on the scorecards. As Bruno Silva has powerful leg kicks, Manel Kape doesn't usually check those. He's got good striking, he's good on the ground, he's finished his last 4 opponents on a 4-fight win streak. Powerful overhands, and Manel Kape usually does his best work in the pocket, where there could be a bit of an exchange there. Really good at mixing up his combinations and shot selections, going to the body, going to the head, mixing up his strikes with elbows and knees and all that sort of stuff. Bruno Silva is great with his variety as well, but I think Manel Kape is a little bit better. Again, the biggest thing for Bruno Silva is to put pressure on Manel Kape, move forward, land big leg kicks from distance, and don't allow Kape to control the pace of the fight, making it slow like that. Bruno Silva has to up the pace, deliver with as much offense as he can to win on the scorecards there. So it's a close fight, but I'll go with Manel Kape by decision. The thing about Kape is when he usually fights better opponents, he doesn't get the knockouts as much, right? You do see a gradual decrease in the amount of times he's able to hurt his opponents depending on how much higher they are in skill level. Like, for example, when he fought Alexander Pantoja or Matheus Nicolau or Muhammad Mokaev or even David Vorak, you don't see those big highlight reels against those guys like you do when he fights Zaga Zumagulov or Ori Osborne or an old Takeya Mizugaki. Now, he did knock out Kai Asakura, but we aren't too sure exactly where Asakura is at in the UFC. He's ranked number 14. Who knows? Maybe he gets some big win streak and beats a bunch of ranked fighters, or he doesn't get a win. He could be the next Will Brooks, who had big wins in his organization. He comes to the UFC and just gets smoked by so many ranked fighters. So I do think the fight will go to a decision, with Manel Kape controlling the pace of the fight, landing big shots, winning in the pocket, and Bruno Silva racking up on points with those leg kicks. I would not be surprised if Bruno Silva won this fight, even though he's a big underdog. He's like a plus 300 underdog. It's insane. And then we go to the co-main event, Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. Cub Swanson is 41 years old. He has to be the oldest featherweight in history, or one of the oldest featherweights ever, right? And he's still performing decently well. I mean, he went to a split decision against Andre Fili, who's around the same skill level as Billy Quarantillo. They have different styles, right? Andre Fili's a lot longer. He has more variety to his strikes, but he's not as good of a boxer. He's not as efficient. And he's not as good on the ground. And that's the thing about Billy. He's mostly mostly a boxer now. He stopped shooting takedowns. From the Edson Barboza fight onward, he has shot 0 takedowns, even though his background is in grappling. He was winning the majority of his fights with his grappling before. But then his last performance against Yusuf Zalal, he got outstruck and outgrappled, which is kind of crazy. That performance alone makes it hard to pick him for this fight against Cub, because Cub looked decently well against Andre Fili. Now, Swanson will also get destroyed by Zalal, but it makes the fight a lot more competitive. But Swanson can be hard to hit sometimes. He's got that dipping and dodging head movement, winging out haymakers and overhands and all that sort of stuff. He's very athletic. He hits very hard. Billy Quarantillo's got fundamental sharp boxing skills, and with him not shooting takedowns anymore, I don't know if he's going to shoot a takedown in this fight. I mean, if he didn't shoot in his last 3 fights, I don't think he'll shoot a takedown here then, right? If he's not shooting a takedown against Edson Barboza, I doubt he's going to shoot a takedown against Swanson then, right? So is Billy Quarantillo going to box with Cub Swanson? I wouldn't be surprised if Quarantillo dropped him and finished it on the ground or something, but I'm going to go with Cub Swanson in this fight very slightly by a decision. I think he racks up on points with those big punches, even though both fighters should have their moments in the fight. And then we go to the featured fight on the card, the main event, Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. Colby is usually the cardio king. He has the best cardio in the welterweight division, the craziest output, insane volume of strikes and takedowns, mixes them up so well, very well rounded, and his output can even land punches on some of the better strikers in the welterweight division, like with Kamaru Usman, right? Even against someone like Kamaru Usman who can keep up with the same kind of pace, it made those fights so legendary. And he was hitting Usman with some big shots as well. It's just he doesn't have that much power, right? Joaquin Buckley is gonna definitely have way more punching power. He's well-rounded himself. He's got decent wrestling, explosive striking, both punches and kicks and all that. Both fighters don't cut a lot of weight. They both said they walk around like 185 pounds, about 182 pounds. And Colby has to push Buckley back. He's got to drown him in the 4th and 5th both rounds. Throw out a lot of volume, constant takedowns, grind the fight against the fence, non-stop takedowns from Colby Covington. And he should win the fight if he does that. Stylistically, Colby should win the fight. But we don't know if we're going to get the same Colby. We can really only go off his last performance. He fought almost exactly a year ago in what was the worst performance we've ever seen in his entire career. He's never fought like that before when he fought Leon Edwards. If he doesn't move forward, mixing up his striking and wrestling in great amount of volume, he's not fighting with the best of his skills. Those are his best skills. And if we see the same Colby Covington that we saw in the Leon Edwards fight, Buckley might knock him out. But if we see the Colby that fought Ottman, Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley, Jorge Masvidal, like that guy I think would beat Buckley. We just have no idea. But I'm going to have to go with Joaquin Buckley. We can only go off Colby of his last performance, and Buckley looked decent against an older Wonder Boy. So I'm going with Joaquin Buckley by maybe like a third round TKO. It's harder to knock out Colby Covington, but Buckley has crazy power and he's very dynamic with his striking. Can land some big flying knee or something like that as Colby's going for a takedown. Buckley's also a decent favorite too, so yeah, Joaquin Buckley's like a minus 270 favorite against the plus like 215, 220 Colby Covington. I don't think it's that wide apart. I think this fight's close. I think Buckley should be like a minus 150, so I would not bet on that fight. Billy Quarantillo is a minus 150 against the plus 125 Cub Swanson. I like Swanson as an underdog. Manel Kep's like a minus 370 against the plus 290 Bruno Silva. That is crazy. Do they think he's fighting the wrong Bruno Silva? This is the Bruno Silva who's on a 4-fight win streak, all finishes, who has the leg kicks and punching power as well. With those kind of odds, I would pick Bruno Silva. Those are really good odds for an underdog Bruno Silva pick. Vitor Petrino is a minus 340 against a plus 270 Dustin Jacoby. I would never bet on Vitor if he's over a minus 200. Daniel Marcos is the favorite against Adrian Yanez. He's a minus 210 against the plus 175 Yanez. I like the underdog pick for Adrian Yanez. Navajo Stirling, minus 750 against the plus 525 Tuco Tokos. Stirling should win, but it is the light heavyweight division between two fighters who are not ranked. Tokos could win by knockout, but I think Stirling should win. Michael Johnson's the favorite, about like a minus 210, 220 against the plus 180 about Ottman Azaitar. I would not bet on that fight, but I do like seeing Michael Johnson this late in his career as a favorite. That's awesome. Yoel Alvarez, the minus 440 against the plus 340 underdog Drakkar Klose. Yeah, I do think Alvarez should win the fight, but I would not bet on those odds. Sean Woodson, minus 155 against the plus 130 Fernando Padilla. I like those odds for Sean Woodson. Felipe Lima is a favorite, minus 250 against the plus 200 Miles Johns. I agree with those. Miranda Maverick, minus 600 against the plus 425 Jamey-Lyn Horth. Not a fight I would bet on, except a parlay. Maverick's too big of a favorite. Davey Grant versus Ramon Taveras is a pick'em. I like that for Taveras. Knuttson's a minus 250 against a plus 200 Rodriguez. I like that for Knuttson as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions. If you guys did, make sure to give the video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Mystic Weasel out.